Hi, high level student. In this video, you are going to learn Introduction to Plant Biology and Water Transport in Xylem. Plant biology is the second last topic that you have to learn as additional high-level topics. Let's start by looking at the general anatomy of a plant. Plant consists of root system and shoot system. Root systems are mostly located under the surface of the soil. It is the place where the plants will get the mineral and also water from the soil. For sure, this part cannot do photosynthesis because they are not exposed to sunlight, and therefore they don't have any chloroplast. The second system is the shoot system. Here you can find the stem and the leaves. The leaves are produced by this tip of the shoot called the terminal bud, and this terminal bud sometimes they produce leaves most of the time, and during the reproductive stage or reproductive season they will differentiate into flowers. So basically flowers are differentiated leaves, alright? But however, in your syllabus, you are not going to learn the monocot. You will only learn dicot. Well, dicot in daily life, we call it as two-leaf seeds, for example, like mung beans, kidney beans. But monocot examples are like corn plant, bamboo, and so on. Now, those plants will not be studied in this topic. You will only learn the structure of a dicot plant. Okay, let's start with the root system that consists of one organ called the root. Now, this is the longitudinal cut of the roots. You can see here on its surface, it has differentiated cell called the root hair cells. It's a long tube and very, very small. The function, of course, yes, to increase the surface area in absorbing mineral and water from the soil. And then the next layer, as you can see from here, that's what we call the epidermis, right? The outermost layer of the roots. And then if you go further, this is the filler. So these cells acting as the filler, okay, to give the volume to the roots. And these cells are called cortex, right? So it is not labeled here, but in the transfer cut or the cross section, you can see that these are the cortex. And then after that, you will see another layer, which is this, the red one. That's what we call the endodermis, right? The endodermis. Now, in the cross section, you can see the endodermis as here is the endodermis. Okay, the root hair, epidermis, cortex, and the endodermis. At the center, which is the red one, these are the xylem tissue. Okay, so this in the cross section is the xylem tissue, and the xylem tissue are surrounded by the phloem. Okay, look at to the longitudinal cut. Okay, these are the phloem. All right. Now, just for your information, it is not part of the topic of plant biology, but just to review a little bit about the cell topic when we talk about the mitotic index. So mitotic index that we calculate comes from this region, okay, the apical meristem. Because why? Because it is the place where the cell are actively divide to make the roots growing deeper into the soil and growing bigger. All right, I hope you are now clear about the structure of the roots. The next one is the stem, the shoot system, part of the shoot system. Now you can see in the longitudinal cut, this is the stem. Of course, the outermost layer, the same like the roots, is called epidermis. So you can see from the transverse cut or cross section, this is the epidermis. And then comes the second layer, which is the cortex. As I have mentioned in the roots, it is a filler. So basically they are undifferentiated cells that just fill the space, all right, in between the epidermis and the inner part. So here you can see in the cross section the cortex that act as the filler. All right, the next layer, here comes the phloem. right? So like in the roots, the xylem is at the center. The same thing also happens for the plant. The phloem can be found first, right? So these are the phloem from longitudinal cut, and in the cross section you can see it here, the phloem. Okay, phloem. Okay, next, the next layer is called the cambium. Now, what is the cambium? Cambium is actually meristem, or part of the plant tissue that is still actively divide itself and undifferentiated, of course. So it's kind of like a stem cell. Now, the function is every year they will create new xylem and new phloem. So maybe you have heard about the annual ring in the plants. Yes, the annual ring. So from year to year, the plant will get thicker and bigger in the stems, because the cambium keep on adding new xylem and new phloem. Okay, so it will make the stem getting bigger and bigger. And the last one, again at the center, this is another filler, which is what we call the pith. So sometimes the function of the pith is to store mineral or store food storage, but in some plants also, at the end, when the plant become mature, the pith is completely disappeared. And here comes the leaf. For the flower, you will talk about it in the future video when we talk about the reproductive system of plants. So for now, let's focus just on the leaf for the shoot system. Alright, so this is the transverse cut of the leaf. So if you take part of the leaves at the center and using the microscope to see what happened in the thickness inside the plant, you will see this, right? So let's start with the first layer on the top. You can see cuticle. So cuticle is made of wax. Why wax? Because wax which made of oil will not mix with water. So inside the plant there are lots of water. To prevent the water from escaping and then and make the leaf to dry, the wax will prevent the evaporation of the water from the leaves, or this process is called transpiration. So transpiration is evaporation of water from leaf surface. Now the next layer is epidermis. Epidermis is very, very thin layer of tissue, and the function is why it is thin and kind of transparent, so that the light can penetrate through and enter the palisade mesophyll, which is the third layer. And the function of palisade mesophyll, this is the main site for photosynthesis, and it is long and thin, to maximizing the space, so they can be found packed very, very densely and tightly one to another, and have lots of chloroplast. And comes the next layer, which is the spongy mesophyll. Right? The spongy mesophyll has air spaces between them. You can see here. Okay, so these are the blank spaces filled with air. Why? Because I hope you still remember topic 2 about photosynthesis. The raw materials of photosynthesis is H2O and CO2 that will produce glucose and oxygen. So the carbon dioxide will come from stomata, which is the opening in on the underside, lower side of the leaves, and it will let the gas to enter. So the gas will diffuse through these air spaces in spongy mesophyll and reach the palisade mesophyll to be used for photosynthesis process. Now the next question is, where does the H2O for the photosynthesis come from? Yes, you may guess the answer is from the xylem. Alright, so the xylem and phloem are located in the vein. Alright, so you can see from here, these are the xylem that can give the water to the palisade mesophyll, and at the end, after photosynthesis happens, the palisade mesophyll also will give the photosynthesis product, glucose, to the phloem to be transported. And then The next one is lower epidermis. The lower epidermis again is very thin, one cell thickness, all right? And we also have stomata here. Now, stomata are actually made of two guard cells, all right? Like this, two guard cells. So it looks like two kidney beans that located closely to one another, and these are the holes for the air to get in. So actually stomata is not an object. It is actually a hole, right, that is created by the two guard cells like this, and this is the hole, the stomata. Now under the microscope, the stomata looks like this. All right. Now among those three, the roots, the stem, and the leaves, you always see phloem and xylem. So these two tissues, special tissues, create plant transport system. So the xylem will create pipe that transport water to top of the plant through the leaves and through the stem to all leaves located in the plant. And after the photosynthesis happen in the leaves or part of the plant that has chloroplast, they will transport the food materials or the product of photosynthesis, which is glucose, to all parts of the plant, including back to the roots and also the growing meristem, right? And this is what we call the plant transport system. Firstly, we will talk in detail the xylem vessel structure, while phloem will be discussed later on when you talk about the food transport and storage in plant. But for now, the video talk, if you see the title, we talk about the water transport in xylem. So let's learn about the xylem first. Now, as you can see from this picture, xylem is a continuous tube. Where are the cytoplasm? Where are the nucleus? They're gone, because basically xylems are dead cells. The end of the cell wall, okay, for example, this is one cell, two cells, the end of each cell wall is gone. So the cell wall between cells are gone to make sure that the water that flow through the xylem can move freely. Okay, and remember, water always has pressure. So to protect the xylem from bursting, the wall of the xylem is thickened by lignin. Of course, it's quite strong because of the cellulose, but if it is getting bigger and the water move more freely, means that more protection is needed. And it will be protected by lignin. So lignin is a polymer like cellulose, but the monomers or the building blocks is not, okay, carbohydrate. It's something else, right? Now, this lignin will make the xylem vessel to be strong to withstand the water pressure. And the pattern of lignification or thickening happens in either helical or annular or ring-shaped pattern. Okay, so this is the helical and this is the annular, so it's kind of like a ring pattern. That's the details of xylem structure. So you have learned how the xylem vessel located in the anatomy of the stem, the roots and the leaves, and also the anatomy, detailed anatomy of the xylem vessel. It means now you are ready to learn the water transport in xylem. Alright, in this picture, okay, you can see that water comes from the soil, enter the roots, go through the stem, and end it in the leaves. So step 1. The step 1 is water uptake in roots. Root hair cell again increases surface area. Now, to make the water get in, you know, the only process only happens by osmosis. Water movement is by osmosis. So osmosis will only happen if there is a gradient of concentration. So that's why the plant firstly has to absorb minerals, ions from soil by active transport, so that the mineral will be accumulated inside the plant cells and the concentration of those mineral ions will be higher than the soil. Therefore, higher concentration of mineral ions in plant cells triggers osmosis to happen from the soil to the cell. Well, in daily life application, that's why you won't give, or the farmers won't give too much fertilizer surrounding the root area. Why? Because it will create such a high concentration of mineral outside of the root cells, and instead of creating osmosis to go to inside the roots, high concentration of fertilizer surround the roots will create the water to do osmosis going out or leaving the cells and make the plant to die. All right, so that's just application of this concept to daily life. All right, so let's continue. The water does enter the xylem at the center of the root tube. So if you still remember the anatomy of the roots, okay, so inside the endodermis you have xylem like this, and the water will enter the xylem. Okay, so remember also not to give your plants too much water. Why? Because to do active transport, oxygen is needed to make ATP. Right? Because ATP is required to do active transport, and ATP can only be produced through the cell respiration, aerobic cell respiration. So oxygen porous soil is very important for the plant to have healthy activity in absorbing or uptaking water in the roots. The step 2 is cohesion and adhesion in the stem. From chapter 2, you have learned that cellulose is polar molecule as well as water. So that's why water will attach to the cell wall here. All right? And this is what we call adhesion. This is very important because it can prevent the water molecule from going down back to the roots because of the gravity force. And the next one, water also has cohesion. So cohesion is the attraction between water molecule. So it happens here, here, and here. Cohesion makes water molecule attached to each other. So you can imagine the toilet paper, between one piece to the next, it is attached, it's connected, and can be pulled. So the water stream like this can be pulled upwards, go to the leaves. Why? Because at the end, on the surface of the leaves, this water molecule that attach to one another, one by one of the molecule will be released to the environment or to the air. Now, the water molecule will evaporate from the stomata, but it will be replaced by the following water molecule. So when this first molecule is gone, it will be replaced by the next, and when there is cohesion, it will make the next water molecule to be pulled up. Okay, so again, these water molecules replace the one that is gone, replaced by the following water molecule because there is cohesion between them. And the last step, which is step 3, transpiration. As I have mentioned before, transpiration is water loss or evaporation from leaves and stem, okay, but not as much as the leaves that what happened in the stem. Right, let's see again. Do you still remember the guard cells? Okay, so the guard cell that create holes called stomata. So one by one of the water molecule will leave the leaves because, of course, diffusion. Right, the water concentration in the air must be lower than the water concentration in the xylem tube. So that's why one by one of the water molecule will leave. Now, this will create, again as I said, because of the cohesion, the water that is gone will be replaced by the following water molecule. Replacement of water molecule by cohesion creates transpiration stream, or the stream of water that is moving up to the leaves, and it will pull the water upwards in the xylem vessels, and this kind of pull is called transpiration pull. So let's summarize a little bit. So from the roots up to the leaves, there are so many mechanisms. In the roots, the water uptake is due to osmosis that is triggered by active transport, and in the stem it's because of the cohesion and adhesion plus the transpiration pull that is exerted starting from the leaves. And then in the leaves, the water molecule will leave the stomata because there is environment that the air has lower concentration of water. So all those three mechanisms makes the water can go from the roots up to the leaves. So this is the animation for the transpiration. It starts from the water that gets into the roots, and then because of the cohesion, adhesion, and transpiration pull, the water molecule go and leave and go to the leaves, and then some of them leaves through the stomata. So, is transpiration a good thing or a bad thing? Well, basically, transpiration is a combination between friend and enemy, or we call it frenemy. Why? Because again, transpiration is the loss of water molecule from the stem and the leaves of the plant. If it happens too much, it means that it will make the plant die because of drying out. However, this process, the transpiration, must happen because the plants must do gas exchange for photosynthesis. Remember to take carbon dioxide and to release oxygen through its stomata. So the gas exchange happens to the stomata, through the stomata. And when the stomata is open, it means that the water molecule can also leave the plants through transpiration. However, this is the good thing. Transpiration also creates transpiration pool that also help the water to reach the plant leaves, even up to the highest one from the roots. Right? So that's why we call it frenemy. In one side, if it happens too much, it's going to be an enemy, but at the other side, it is important because the stomata needs to be open anyway, and transpiration pool will help the water to go up to the highest leaf in the plant. Now, in the next video, you will learn how plants has evolved to control or to have a mechanism to control this transpiration or their frenemy. Alright, thank you so much. I hope you can understand the introduction of the plant and also the transport of water through xylem.